Okay, this should be, I think I've lost track. Number 4. The last one should have ended with a discussion of indexical expressions. Words like this or what. How would these things be defined? If they were to have essential features, what would the essential features look like? And the thing is that you use the words and you don't know the definitions. I mean, what's the definition of the word the? But there's a lot more words than this, and one of the reasons to have the gender discussion that's written in the lectures is to say, if you really do have hormones or chromosomes as your definition of, if not gender, biological sex, then you almost never have that available. And it couldn't possibly be how people actually categorize, because you simply don't have that information. So then that becomes a critique of criteria attribute theory, which, after all, we're interested in to see how people actually categorize. If it really is a matching up with essential features, then you would expect that people would know the essential features and have the essential features available to them when they categorized, and they don't. Just one other thing. Think about how many colors you know that you could actually name. If you like, stop this right now and just try and name a few. So let's see. Red, yellow, blue, green. Yeah. Do you remember the Crayola crayon box that maybe your parents got for you? If they really loved you, maybe they got you the 128 crayon box, and there's a magenta and maize and I don't know. Say you got all those. According to the research I've seen, people can discriminate over 1 million colors. How many of those could you name? The English language has maybe, 3,000 words for color? Do you know them all? I mean, let's forget about the essential features of it. How many, if you know that many colors, and you don't know that many colors, say you could name 50, 100 colors, how many index cards would you have? That is to say, how many things can you categorize? How many categories do you have? 100,000? 500,000? 10,000? Now, the way that this would work is, every time you saw an object, you would have to compare the object to the cards in your head. Even assuming that it's a fairly fast system, you'd have to be able to see every object and have the time to think about it. And what I would argue is that the world is just too fast for that. If you're driving on the freeway, especially I drive on one called the 85, you don't have the time. Actually, the 101 is probably even better. If you're like me and you're driving fast, you don't really have the time to say, is that an adequate spot for me to put my car into? By the time you think about all that, that spot is gone. This is the 101. I used to drive on the 405 down in LA. They don't even give traffic reports on the 405 in LA because it's always like that. Always. You want to get through that? You got to want it. You have to put your car where a space might be. There's no time to think about whether or not a space is or not. Things go very quickly. How quickly do you come into a room and how quickly can you differentiate biological sex? You think you get to look at somebody to check out their areas to try and figure out what's going on? You have to be able to do these things in a glance. A guy named David Sudnow, 4 decades ago, I think, did some work on phenomena that had to be done very quickly. One of them is when you're crossing a busy street, you sort of have to look at the driver and see the driver seeing you. But what you can't do is stare at the driver. You can't just go as you're walking by. People get pissed, especially this was Los Angeles. You just don't know what will happen. How fast do you have to categorize things? How quickly do you categorize things? You couldn't go through your whole dictionary in your head each time. Think about speaking that way, where each time you had to say each word, you had to go through an entire dictionary. All right. So I've still got more to make on that case. but just two to start with. One, the lesson of indexical expressions is that we don't know the definitions for all the words that we use. And I'm arguing that there's a case to be made for speed. I want to make a second case with speed. This is a little bit more difficult, but it looks like this. Here. I don't know what that's going to sound like. Pretty loud, I'd say. All right. So you do this experiment. You can use your friends, especially if they, drink or something like that. And you say you're just going to announce a category like furniture. And then what they have to do is, if the thing you say is a piece of furniture, then they're supposed to come down as fast as they can. Just like that. That's it. Just quickly as they possibly can. So you come down and it's like a sofa, right? Or chair, right? All right. But then you do things like refrigerator. Now, some people just come down because they're trying to play the game as fast as they possibly can. But you'll get a little hesitation. People will pull back. Then if you say lamp, ottoman, which a lot of people won't know about, rug, does a rug count as furniture? Television, Some things are more quickly come down on, others take more thought. This is a way of getting into something called prototype theory. The idea of prototype theory is that you have sort of an ideal image for each category in your head. Objects then come closer to or farther away from that ideal image. Here's where the speed comes in. The more quickly you can identify something as a member of a category, the more like the ideal it should be. Now, some things are farther away, so you say, well, a refrigerator is really an appliance and not a piece of furniture. Then you say, okay, well, what makes it an appliance? It's like, well, it's got a cord, it's electrical and things like this. Okay, is a lamp furniture or an appliance? How about one of those chairs that you plug in and it does that little massage thing? Is that an appliance because it's plugged in? Is it more appliance-y because it's plugged in, but it's not like a microwave? And so the idea of prototype theory, and I'll write some of this down, is that there's sort of a usual, ideal, prototypical thing that stands in for each category. So if you think about if somebody says, hey, I just got a car, you have some sort of prototypical thing that you're thinking about, and then if they show up and they're driving a Hummer, you're like, hey, whoa. Because a Hummer is almost not even a car. It's a Hummer, and you call it that, or at least you did when they used to make them. So prototype theory says it's not a set of essential features, but a central image. And part of the evidence of that is that you can get farther and farther away from that image. And if you say bird, the question is, what will people list? And how long does it take them to list things like an ostrich or a pterodactyl? Those things they're birdie, but they're not the most birdie birds that ever were. There are less birdie birds and more birdie birds. You recall from criteria attribute theory, one of the assumptions was equal membership. All members have the same essential features. And so they're all equally members. Well, prototype theory suggests something different, which is some are more birds and some are less birds. All right, I'll continue that on the next one.